Hey, welcome back to the Amplified Podcast. It's good to see all of you guys. I'm glad you're joining us here today. We are working our way through the book of Numbers, and you may feel like, why would anyone want to go all the way through the book of Numbers? Well, it's because there's actually a ton in there that relates not only to our lives, but relates to the New Testament and is the reason why Jesus did so much of what he did, and how Jesus is, the fulfillment of who Moses was trying to be, and who Joshua was trying to be, and who Aaron was trying to be, because we're seeing the description of what the high priest is supposed to do in all of this, but Jesus is the great high priest. Moses, you could say, is kind of like the king. He's the leader of God's people, and he's not perfect. But Jesus is the true leader of God's people, and he is perfect. And so we get to see a whole different, side to the gospel when we actually understand what context they were operating in, but also the books that they were reading. All of these boys that you read about in the New Testament would have known the Torah front to back. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These boys would have been studying it from an early age. We're talking elementary school. And so it's important for us to understand it as well as we're going through. And so today we're going to be examining chapter 19 and chapter 20. So chapter 19 is a little shorter, has to do with the red heifer. And chapter 20 is the death of Miriam. So we're going to look at these two together. If you want to go ahead and open up your Bibles, like I said, we're in Numbers 19. You can read New Living Translation. You can read NIV, whatever you want. The point of this podcast is to help you understand what's going on. Because if somebody handed you a book this big for the first time, and yes, this is the book, this is the book among books. This is the most important one in the world. Still, it is so much information, so much going on, so many names, so many cities, so many places, so many peoples, that even with the best of intentions, you can start to feel overwhelmed. And so this podcast is to help those who feel overwhelmed. Maybe you've been in church for a long time and you're starting to get lost in the details, or maybe you're a brand new Christian and you're trying to understand the Bible for the very first time. This podcast is for you. And so you can read it out of the Amplified. That's what I always read out of. And I highly recommend, if you're looking to buy a new Bible and maybe you don't want a whole new set, the all 66 books. I don't know if anyone's ever called it a set, but if you want just one book of the Bible, maybe Psalms or Proverbs, highly recommend getting these Alabaster Bibles. And of course, the link is always in the bio below. And so, the more people that understand the Bible, the better. So let's go ahead and dive in together. So this is going to be Numbers chapter 19. We just talked about the priest portion and what they get to eat and what they get to receive from the people, what they get to, feed their families with. But we also saw how God said once and for all that Aaron is his chosen servant, with the way that he caused Aaron's, his staff, his dead wooden stick, his walking stick, he caused it to bud and grow almonds overnight. We serve the God of life, the God of miracles, the one who designed the trees around us. Why wouldn't he be able to do a miracle like that? So today we're going to talk about the red heifer, and I'll probably get into some conspiracy theories about it too. So verse 19 says this. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "This is the statute of the law which the Lord has commanded. Tell the Israelites to bring you an unblemished red heifer, in which there is no defect and on which no yoke has ever been placed." And so this is a female cow that has no defects, not a single white hair, not a single black hair. This is an entirely red cow. You shall give it to Eleazar, the priest, and it shall be brought outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence. Next, Eleazar the priest shall take some of its blood with his finger, sprinkle some of it toward the tent of meeting 7 times. Then the heifer shall be burned in his sight, its skin, its flesh, its blood, and its waste shall be burned and reduced to ash. The priest shall take the cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet material and cast them into the midst of the burning heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward come into the camp. But he shall be ceremonially unclean until evening. The one who burns the heifer shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and shall be unclean until evening. So, the Lord is describing a more specific, I don't like the word ritual, but a more specific action on behalf of the high priest to take not just any normal bull, not just any normal cow, but specifically a red heifer. And he's supposed to sacrifice it outside the camp away from everybody else. And so I'm hoping that the Bible's going to explain here why here in just a moment. Now, a man who is ceremonially clean shall collect the ashes of the heifer and deposit them outside the camp in a clean place, and the congregation of the Israelites shall keep it for water to remove impurity. It is to be used for the purification from sin. The one who gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. This shall be the perpetual statute to the Israelites, to the stranger who lives as a resident alien among them. The one who touches the dead body of any person shall be unclean for 7 days. That one shall purify himself from the uncleanness with water made with the ashes of the burned heifer. On the 3rd day and on the 7th day, he will be clean. But if he does not purify himself on the 3rd day and the 7th day, he will not be clean. So I think this could talk a little bit about, well, I was thinking about charcoal, because they put charcoal in like toothpaste and stuff now, and it's supposed to clean your teeth better. Although I heard that ended up being just a huge marketing scheme. But the idea of ashes being used to clean something, I think it boils down to just being very symbolic that this animal died in place of you and I. Because we sin, because we make mistakes, because we're not perfect, and Christ didn't make us to be perfect either. Because we sin, something has to pay the price. Otherwise, we would have to give our own lives every single time we make even a small mistake. So the Lord makes it a way where the animal pays the sacrifice, or pays the price. And we've talked about this ad nauseum. But specifically this time, it's a red heifer. And let's see if it tells us more about it. Whoever touches a corpse, the body of anyone who has died, and does not purify himself, defiles the tabernacle of the Lord, and that person shall be cut off from Israel. That is, excluded from atonement made for them. Because the water for impurity was not sprinkled on him, he shall be unclean. His uncleanness is still on him. This is the law when a man dies in a tent. Everyone who comes into the tent and everyone who is in the tent shall be ceremonially unclean for 7 days. I think the Lord is trying to get something across here, that the use of dead things is meant to be only used for food. And that's, even then, it's very specific animals that are supposed to be used. Around them, you would have had tribes and Canaanites that had other more creative purposes for dead things and dead bodies. God wants none of this in his midst. The simple fact that you're dealing with a dead body means that you have some of that. It could have been bacteria. It could have been just the ceremonially uncleanness upon you, means that you had to wash yourself before you came into the holiness of the Lord, because the holiness of the Lord would consume you at that moment. And so this is all about God wanting to wash away all of the sin of the world, all the sin of the Canaanites from among his people, so that they can be among him all the time, so that he can be among them all the time. This is one of the more difficult chapters to understand, and so I'm having a little trouble with it as well. This is the law. Okay, 15. Every open container in the tent which has no covering tied down on it is also unclean. Also, anyone in the open field who touches the one who has been killed with the sword, or has died of natural causes, or a human bone or a grave, shall be unclean for 7 days. Perhaps the Lord's trying to teach them hygiene. Perhaps he's trying to teach them just ceremonial cleanness, and that's it. I have a feeling he's probably trying to teach them hygiene, because so much sickness comes from dealing with dead things that are disposed of, that are used, that are handled improperly. Again, the tribes around them in Egypt itself would have been involved in all sort of heinous sacrificial systems and rituals that involved dead things, and God didn't want his people to get involved in that at all. So it's, you're not just unclean till the end of the day. If you deal with a dead person, you're unclean for an entire week, which means you can't go to tabernacle, you can't touch anybody, because your uncleanness would transfer onto them in the same way bacteria does. And so it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Verse 17, then for the unclean person, they shall take some of the ashes of the heifer burnt for the purification from sin, and running water shall be added to them in a container. A clean person shall take a hyssop and dip it into the water and sprinkle it on the tent and on all the furnishings and on all the people who were there, and the one who touched the bone or was killed, or the one who died naturally, or the grave. Then the clean person shall sprinkle the water for purification on the unclean person on the third day and on the seventh day. On the seventh day, the unclean man shall purify himself, wash his clothes, bathe himself in water, and shall be ceremonially clean at evening. Last 3 verses. But the man who is unclean and does not purify himself, that person shall be cut off from among the assembly, because he has defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. The water for purification has not been sprinkled on him, he is unclean. So it shall be a perpetual statute to them. He who sprinkles the water for impurity on another shall wash his clothes, and he who touches the water for impurity shall be unclean until evening. Furthermore, anything the unclean person touches shall be unclean. Anyone who touches it shall be ceremonially unclean until evening. This is also just one massive metaphor for sin, that if we're going to come into the temple of God, we may come in with our sin, but the Lord wants to wash us clean. We cannot keep coming back to God's house, to the church, week after week after week with the same sins. Sometimes it's things that we don't know about, and the Lord is purifying us over time. But if it's sins that you're involved in your life, and you're refusing to allow the Lord to refine you, we talked a lot about this last night, to give you his characteristics in exchange for your shame, in exchange for your sin, the things you're involved in your life that you shouldn't, then you're cut off. I'm not talking about people that don't understand sin. I'm not talking about ignorance in this case. I'm specifically talking about willful sins, that if you're unclean in this case, when we're talking about scripture, and you come into the tabernacle, then you've defiled the tabernacle. If you're involved in all of these sins, you keep coming to church week after week, it's not a gracious thing that you're experiencing. You're actually drawing closer and closer to the God that wants to wipe away all the sin from you. And I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like a slap in the face to the Lord to keep showing up with your sins every single week. And he's so gracious and so kind, and he wants to purify you, and he wants to take all those things away from you. But you keep coming over and over, and it's like a person who is unclean coming into the tabernacle. And Jesus is the once and final sacrifice. I honestly don't know why it's specifically a red heifer. And when they consecrate the third temple that they're going to build in Jerusalem, I'm sure in the coming decades, coming generations, the first thing that they're going to sacrifice is a red heifer to purify the temple and purify all the materials and things. But it's all about doing away with sin. It's all about God making us more like him. That's, in the same way, if you were sick or if you touch dead bodies and things, you shouldn't be touching other people, because you're going to contaminate them with germs and bacteria and different things. I think it's the same way with sin, that if we're involved in all this sin in our lives and we keep hanging around with people and spending time with them, then that sin nature, if we're not careful, they're going to start to get involved in the same stuff you are. It's contagious. But thankfully, so is the goodness of God, that he wants to grab onto every person and free them from their sins and free them from any kind of shame and anything that they're dealing with. And so it's a complex chapter. It's not something that we're involved in today. Obviously, we're not sacrificing, at least as Christians, we are not sacrificing any bulls or lambs or goats. That was all finalized with Jesus. But this was a real way for them to purify themselves before the Lord at that time. So that's getting into Levitical stuff, but the rest of this chapter is all narrative. Like I said, when we're going through Numbers, we're going to see a lot more narrative. So this is the story of when Moses' sister Miriam finally passed away. Then the Israelites, the whole congregation, came to the wilderness of Zin in the first month in the 40th year after leaving Egypt. So they've been out of Egypt for 40 years now. Miriam is likely 120, 125 years old. And this is assuming that Miriam is Moses' older sister in this case. Aaron is definitely the older brother, and I think Miriam is older than Moses. And so you have to think Moses was 80 when he came into Egypt. This is 40 years later. Moses is 120. Miriam's probably 122 years old at this point. And the people lived in Kadesh. And Miriam died there and was buried there in Kadesh. Now there was no water for the congregation. They gathered together against Moses and Aaron, typical. And the people contended with Moses and said, "If only we had perished when our brothers perished in the plague before the Lord." So now they're so upset. They have been fed by God every single morning for 40 years now. And they're finally arrived at a place right before they go into the wilderness. And they're still complaining against Moses and Aaron as if he's not strong enough to also give them water, or that he doesn't know what their needs are. And so they square up with Moses and Aaron once again. "Why have you brought us up the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness to die here, we and our livestock? Why have you made us come up from Egypt to bring us to this wretched place? It is not a place of grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, and there's no water to drink." Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the doorway of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. The glory and the brilliance of the Lord appeared to them, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, whenever you are a leader, or I guess any person in your life, and you're faced with a situation where you don't know what to do, the best answer is to fall on your face before Jesus and ask him. So here's what it says. It's the water of Meribah. "Take the rod, you and your brother Aaron, assemble the congregation and speak to the rock in front of them, so that it will pour out its water. In this way you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and let the congregation and their livestock drink fresh water." Now remember, this has happened before where God has told Moses to take his staff and strike the rock, and when he did, all this water came pouring out. But this time, he wants to take it a step further, and he wants Moses to speak to the rock. Speak to the rock. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord, just as he had commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly before the rock. And Moses said to them, "Listen now, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Then Moses raised his hand in anger, and with his rod he struck the rock twice, instead of speaking to the rock as the Lord commanded. And the water poured out abundantly, and the congregation and their livestock drank fresh water. Now catch what he said. He said, you rebels, do Aaron and I now have to bring water from this rock for you? He's trying to take God's place in this case. He's trying to say that I think it's out of anger, but also out of arrogance from Moses at this point, where we're going to see God tell Moses at this point that he's not going to go into the promised land because of this act of aggression, this act of, rebellion against God himself. Verse 12, "But the Lord said to Moses, because you have not believed me, trusted me to treat me as holy in the sight of the sons of Israel, you therefore shall not bring this assembly into the land which I've given them." So God saw it as an affront against him that Moses didn't trust that he could speak to the rock and tell water to come forth. And so now God has told him that you're not going to go into the promised land because of this. Verse 13. These are the waters of Meribah, which means contention or strife, where the sons of Israel contended with the Lord, and he showed himself holy among them. Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. Thus says your brother Israel, you know all the hardship that has come upon us as a nation. Now remember, it says your brother Israel because the Edomites were descendants of Jacob's brother Esau. So we have Abraham at the top. His son was Isaac, the promised son. And then Isaac had two sons, Jacob and Esau. All the sons and the generations that came after Jacob became the Israelites, and all the sons that came after Esau became the Edomites. So in a way, they're cousins, but he calls him brother in this case. Because of this relationship, Moses had a special basis of appeal, and for the same reason, the Israelites were not to fight the Edomites. So that's important. Here's what it says. You know all the hardships that have come upon us as a nation, that our fathers, our ancestors, went down to Egypt, and we lived there for a long time. And the Egyptians treated both us and our fathers badly. But when we cried out to the Lord for help, he heard us and sent an angel and brought us out of Egypt. Now look, we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your territory. Please let us pass through your land. We will not pass through a field or through a vineyard. We will not even drink water from a well. We will go along the king's highway, not turning off course to the right or to the left until we've passed through your territory. It's really a nicety, or I don't know what you call it. Just like he's going through the motions, because really they're going to the promised land regardless of what the Edomites say or not. But he's trying to be nice to the king of Edom and say, listen, we're going to bring a large group of people. It's going to look like an army is coming into your territory. We're not stopping. We're not even going to drink any water from your territory. We're on our way to Canaan. And he's doing them the kindness of letting him know beforehand and asking him for his help. Well, kind of asking for his help. He's just letting him know, heads up, this is what we're doing. Please let us pass through your land. Okay, verse 18. But the king of Edom said to him, you shall not pass through my territory, or I will come against you with the sword. Again, the Israelites said to him, we will go by the highway, trade routes, and if I and my livestock drink any of your water, then I will pay for it. Only let me pass through on foot, nothing else. So they're not even saying we're going to blaze our own trail. They're saying we're going where everyone else travels through your land all the time. It's just going to be a lot of us. But the king of Edom said, you shall not pass through my territory. And Edom came out against Israel with many people and a strong hand. So they took this as an act of aggression. Thus the king of Edom refused to give Israel passage through his territory. So Israel turned away from him. Now, when they set out from the Kadesh, the Israelites, the whole congregation, came to Mount Hor. Remember, this is in kind of like the southwest portion of what is even modern day Israel. They're coming out of the Sinai Peninsula, and they're traveling up toward the Fertile Crescent. All right, another sad case here for Moses. This is three major sad things from Moses in a row. We see his sister pass away. Then we see him being told by God that you're not going into the promised land. And now we see the death of Aaron, his brother. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron at Mount Hor by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron will be gathered to his people in death, for he shall not enter the land which I've given to the children of Israel, because you both rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah that we just talked about. Then Aaron and Eleazar his son, take Aaron and Eleazar his son and bring them up to Mount Hor. This is the Lord speaking. Strip Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar his son, not like in ridicule or, in aggression. Take the priestly garments off of him, not strip him naked. Take the priestly garments off of him and pass it to his son. Put them on Eleazar his son, so Aaron will be gathered to his fathers and will die there. So Moses did just as the Lord had commanded, and they went up Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. After Moses stripped Aaron of all his priestly garments and put them on Eleazar his son, Aaron died there on the mountaintop. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. When all the congregation saw that Aaron had died, all the house of Israel wept and mourned for him for 30 days. So you can be seen as a sad thing that's happening. Aaron is being stripped of his responsibilities, but this is succession in the most amazing way, that Aaron has done a good job, so he gets to pass down this job to his son, Eleazar. And he gets to be alive to do it as well. And at that very next moment, he gets to go and be with the Lord for eternity. So you could see this is a sad moment. It is sad for Moses. He's lost his brother and his sister very quickly here. And he's been told that he's not going into the promised land. But I'm sure he's guessed by this point that he gets to go and be with the Lord, which is what we all want to do. So that is Numbers 19 and Numbers 20. We have the purification of the people and those that have touched dead things through washing with the ashes, washing with ashes and water from the red heifer. And then we get to see another rebellion on behalf of the people to not believe that God can even bring them water. And so God, of course, is faithful. He's generous, and he gives them more water than they know what to do with. But at the same time, we see Miriam and Aaron both pass away. And so this was a bit shorter of an episode today, but man, I think we can still see the grace of God in this, that he wants to purify his people. He wants to cleanse sins. He wants to take the responsibilities and what good jobs we've done as parents and pass them down to their children, the blessings from one generation to the next. But we also see the strictness of God's nature, that he is who he says he is. He is good. He is faithful. He is trustworthy. And if we're going to choose to rebel against that, then there's consequences. And so today was a shorter episode. The next episode is one of the most interesting passages in all of Numbers. Two of the most interesting passages in all of Numbers. The next episode is going to be wild. So tune in with us next week on Monday, and we will see you guys around on the Amplified Podcast.